Welcome back to Earth and Glam, everybody. Today we're going to be making our arch grace style earrings in this topaz color. We'll kick off with picking out the colors we're going to mix together to get that topaz muted tone that we're looking for. We're going to start off with mixing a little bit of flat white, some light brown, and this really vibrant teal that we're hoping to calm down when we mix up these three colors. My preferred way of mixing three separate colors is to chop it down and then mold it together, do an initial roll with an acrylic roller, get it thin enough to put through our pasta roller, and repeat the pasta roller steps a few times. And of course, if you don't have a pasta roller, this can be all done with an acrylic roller, but it definitely speeds up the process when you're mixing a few colors that you're going to incorporate into one tone. And here's our final color. I'm really excited about it. We'll go through and stamp our design into it. At this point, I determined it'd be good to add a texture, so I'm adding a little bit of texture with that sandpaper. Make sure to use clean sandpaper when doing this process. We're going to go through and do the rest of our cuts. For the top part of the earring, we're going to be using this other arch shape. So I'm going to go through and add some of those as well. Remove the excess clay. Careful to make sure we're not ruining any of the shapes that we just created or putting fingerprints into the clay. I'm using the scraper tool to make sure we have a fine line on the top, and then we'll also use this tool to transfer the pieces to our baking surface. And once everything's been transferred to the baking surface, we'll take it over to the oven, and we are going to bake these at 270 for 30 minutes. Make sure you use a thermometer to make sure your oven's the proper temperature. As you probably see, my oven says 280. It just wasn't heating up hot enough this day. And once we've let the items cool, we will bring the pieces over to our workstation, and I'm using a Dremel to sand down the corners to get rid of any impurities, but if you do not have a Dremel, feel free to use sandpaper. And repeat this process for all pieces. Once all the pieces have been sanded, for this design I wanted a shiny finish to it, so I'm adding some UV resin to the top. Initially, I'm adding a dollop to the top. I'm going back in with a ballpoint tool to make sure that all the liquid is spread evenly. Once that process has been repeated for all the pieces you want to have a shine finish, I'll put them onto another baking surface. I'm using a smaller one because I'm using a nail UV machine. Using a lighter, I go over the pieces to remove any air bubbles before I put them in the UV light. From here, we will put them under a UV light for about 1.5 minutes. Once the resin has cured, I moved the pieces over to a surface to Dremel the holes in. I'm adding 2 holes to the top piece, one for the hook and one for the jump loop to connect the bottom piece. And on the bottom piece of this design, I'm only adding 1 hole. And now we're ready to add the hardware. I picked silver-plated nickel-free hooks and jump rings for this process. I'm using needle nose pliers to open up the jump rings or hooks and repeat this step for the remaining. Once all hardware has been added, the earrings are fully assembled, and this is our arch grace design. These can be purchased at earthandglam.shop. Thanks for tuning in, everybody.